Hello, welcome back. This video is about one of those evergreen content things that we get wondering about every year. We get our seed catalogs and we start scrolling through them. And if we're really dedicated into self-reliance or environmental issues, we look at every detail of the description. One of them is seed type. And you'll come across mostly heirloom or hybrid. There's also another one you'll come across sometimes, and that's heritage. You may have heard of GMO or genetically modified, and sometimes on the package or in the catalog they'll have non-GMO. Well, you can't buy GMO. It's illegal to sell them to the average homeowner. You have to be a farmer of a certain size and make a contract with the producer of the GMO seeds. So there's no way you can actually buy a GMO seed anyway. The other word that comes up very often is open pollinated. So let's go through these and I'll tell you what each one means. First off, just a little short lesson in genetics. So what I've done here, you see, for every trait in a plant or a person, you have a gene. So the color is signifying what the gene is. So say it's the size of the tomato. It's all the same color here, but there is a scale. So there's a wide variety. If you were to go get just a wild plant, you'd have a wide variety of genetics. And you save a seed from that, you don't know what size of tomato that plant usually gives. Because it could be anywhere from down to this light pink up to this deep red. Could be the intensity of that gene. And when a person is developing a plant, they have a select few genes that they're developing for. So I've got a bunch of dots here. It signifies the different traits that they develop for. They can't see the genes, of course. That's in the cells on the chromosomes. So they have to select for the visible representation of that plant. And for each seed and each animal, they have two sets of chromosomes, one from each parent. And so here we have it. You see, this is a completely hybrid seed. You have just this entire batch, column A and column B, is the one seed. When you save seed from this, that seed will have a random selection of each one. Random selection of row 1 and a random selection of row 2, row 3, and so on. So there's a wide variety of combinations you can make if you save an hybrid seed or a wild seed. You don't know what you're going to get in the resulting plant. You can grow them and you might be surprised and you might really like it. But you don't know until that plant produces. So, as we select for the different traits, then we'll get this one closer and closer to the one shade. Get the same shade on both sides. Then we end up with this for our seed. Now it doesn't matter when the plant produces a seed, whether the gene is taken from column A or column B, because they're both the same. So that plant will always produce the same genetics. If you cross the plant resulting from this seed with a plant resulting from the same type of seed, then you'll get a plant that produces and acts pretty much exactly like the parent. Once this is proven, because like I said, you can't see the genetics, you can only go by the physical expression. So after many generations of this, then it is considered a genetically stable plant, and you can call it a variety. After several years, it's considered an heirloom. You can save seeds. They will always reproduce what they call true to type. The other one I mentioned is similar, is heritage. Now, heritage seed is really from farmers in a local area. They saved their seeds and there was no other genetics introduced into that area. So over time, the best producers get to be a very uniform genetics. And so something like French breakfast radish, it's a heritage from somewhere in France. And it was developed just accidentally by farmers saving seed from the best crop. But they're basically the same. Sometimes those two words get mixed up. If you're looking at the seed catalogue from Europe or UK, you would see that word heritage a lot more than you would in North America. Now, I already mentioned hybrid, but as we were saying, so a heirloom or a heritage for this select set of traits can only give you the one type of genetics. So they will always reproduce true to seed. However, if you add another heirloom or heritage, then you can cross it with that one, and you'd end up with something like this. This is a perfect hybrid. We add one heirloom here, crossed with a second heirloom here, to give you an hybrid seed. Now, if you save seed from that, you don't know. A random selection from column A and column B for each trait, you don't know what that plant is going to give you. One, for the exact trait, and two, for the mixture between the traits. It's quite a wide variety, and you might get something good, you might not. It's one of those situations, why reinvent the wheel type thing. If you want a Brandywine tomato, why try to get it out of an hybrid when the Brandywine tomato is already developed? You might as well just go get the heirloom Brandywine. So we have heirloom, always reproduces true to seed. Heritage, quite similar, but it will have a wider genetic diversity and will produce pretty much true to seed. Hybrid, the producer can tell you exactly what that combination will give you. So they can give you an hybrid variety. But once it goes beyond that, it's no longer a variety, it's just some mixture that nobody knows. There are in cases though, and this is why on some seed description you'll get F1. You can also get an F2 and an F3. The producers, they know if you develop an hybrid and then you cross that hybrid with an hybrid of the same variety, they know the traits that will come out of the following generation. So they can give you an F2 and sometimes an F3 plant. But there, if it's F1, 2, or 3, it's hybrid. Now about the GMO, they are produced, like I said, for the large farms, for large output. It's done by splicing a gene of one species. It doesn't have to be plant to plant. It could be plant to plant, animal to plant, plant to animal. Whichever way they do it, they splice a portion of the genetics of one species into the chromosomes of another species to give the desired trait that that gene produces in the original species. For instance, Bt corn. Bt, Bacteria thuringiensis, produces a toxin for caterpillars that gives it basically indigestion. They have taken the gene that gives that trait and injected it into the chromosome of the corn. And so now you have Bt corn. The corn itself will give caterpillars indigestion, so they don't eat it. And you don't have to use the spray chemicals to get rid of a caterpillar infestation. But you can't buy those. There's a word that's still misunderstood. It's open pollinated. Most of the seeds, heirloom and heritage, that you'll get will be open pollinated. Open pollinated means they use just the natural pollination vectors. So you plant your plant out in your garden and let nature do its thing. You save the resulting seeds from that. The advantage to that, you see, is that you can plant thousands of plants and let nature do its thing. It's much, much easier to produce seeds that way at scale. To get an hybrid, you have to make sure somehow that the pollen from plant A gets to plant B, and then the pollen from plant B back to plant A. To do that, it's either pollinating. I don't know what technology they have. They may have other technologies now besides just pollinating. But for the home gardener, you would go and you'd get the pollen from one plant and then with a Q-tip or something and go over to the other plant and poke it in the flower of the other plant to cross those two varieties. That being said, just because it's heirloom or heritage doesn't mean that it is open pollinated. You can hand pollinate your squash, and this is something home gardeners do a lot. They watch, say, a pumpkin, and as soon as the flower opens, they will hand pollinate them, and then they'll tie them off so that no insects can get inside. And they know then that that squash has not been cross-pollinated with any of the other squashes that they're growing. Still a heirloom plant. The seeds that you get from that will be heirloom seeds, but it's hand-pollinated. The other way of doing that would be some kind of a vector restriction. So if you were growing them in a greenhouse, for instance, you could release a bunch of insects in the greenhouse and let them do the pollinating for you. But they can't get out and no other insects can get in. Then the only plants that's possible for them to pollinate is the variety that you have there. So that's a couple different ways that you can actually get heirloom and heritage seeds and they not be open pollinated. Open pollinated, though, has an advantage, because what we have here is 7 different traits. Now a plant has many more traits than 7. All of the rest of the genetics in that plant can be very diverse, and the more plants you have, the more diverse it is. So you put out in the field, you've got thousands of plants, you've got a great diversity of genetics of all those others. And if you're growing in somewhere like I am, for instance, and you're trying to find the genetics that grows best in your climate, then open pollinated will give you the most likelihood of getting a plant to do well. And then you save seed from your stock, and over time you can get that genetic drift into a plant developed for your climate. However, if you're getting them from hand pollinated, it's only a few plants. You're not going to go out and hand pollinate 1,000 plants. A producer will hand pollinate a dozen plants, let's say, well, you've only got the genetics from those dozen plants. With vector restrictions, still, you're restricted by size. You can only have a greenhouse of a certain size. So you're greatly restricted in the number of plants that you're gathering seeds from. Therefore, a lot of times the seed supplier likes to put on open pollinated to indicate that yes, this plant is open pollinated. Because if it doesn't say open pollinated, you don't know. If you're looking for saving your own seeds, the best option is open pollinated. It will act the same as any other heirloom, but you will have those other genetic diversity that will, once you're saving seeds, will give you that genetic drift that over time will give you a better and better plant for your particular set of circumstances. So I hope that made sense. And I thank you for watching. If you'd like to follow along with my growing here and finding the genetics that grows best in my climate, then hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified, and I'll see you in the next video.